Hey everyone, and welcome to the Rush FM, a podcast where design and business meet in the same place. Weekly talks with industry experts on how they do it. Let's begin the show. Today, I have the pleasure of speaking with Chris Do. Hello, Chris.
Hey, how's it going, man?
Yeah, I'm good. And you?
I'm doing great. Lucky to be alive every single day. Grateful for my health and my family.
Can you introduce yourself?
So I'm Chris Do. I run two companies. One is a service company and one is a content education platform. The first company, the one I've been running for the longest, is called Blind. It's been something I've run since 1995. And if you had to put us into a category, most people would know us as a motion design firm. What does that really mean? It means that we make commercials for some of the biggest brands in the world. And we work with large agencies like Wieden & Kennedy, Shy Day, Leo Burnett, some of the biggest agencies in the world. On the other side is the content education company called The Future. And The Future is spelled F-U-T-U-R. There's no E at the end. And what we're trying to do there is to build a new paradigm of how design is taught and even the content in which is taught. So we mix design fundamentals with business philosophy and business principles because we believe that the whole creative, where the left and the right brain are in balance, is what is needed for the 21st century problems.
Actually, there are not so many companies who can say that they are from the 90s even like opened on the market. I mean,
right.
For 20 years on the market, that's a longer time, 2 decades already.
Right. You look like a pretty young guy.
Yeah, of course.
How old are you?
I'm younger than you. I'm 24.
You're a little bit younger than me for sure. But I'm
yeah, like curious. 2 decades,
Yeah, a little bit. So we might have been running our company for longer than some of your audience has been alive.
That's definitely.
Just to put it in perspective.
Yeah. What I wanted to ask you, how did you come into the whole design industry? Because most people usually come, they have their parents are designers and they just follow their path and so on. How is your path? How did you come into the design industry?
My path is a little bit different because my mom was a designer drafter working for IBM and my father was an engineer working for a large semiconductor company called Applied Materials. So my mom is a very creative person. She paints, she sews, she makes stuff, but she's really practical and pragmatic. And so she would go to work from 9 to 5, and then on the weekends and sometimes after work, she would start painting, and she would paint oil paintings, pastels, chalk, anything and everything. And she's a very talented person. But when I was growing up, the career path of becoming a designer was very foreign. It was not even something I knew. I didn't even know the word graphic designer. Mm-hmm. It was just all called art. Mm-hmm. If you made something, it was called art. And the association I had with art was somebody who worked on the street drawing your caricature, your portrait. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Somebody that I would see at Fisherman's Wharf on the pier or on the dock. Somebody who would spray paint with an airbrush your name on a T-shirt. Mm-hmm. That was the only association exposure I really had to what art was as far as profession. Like I knew art is in what exists in the gallery, but that seemed so far away from the world that I was coming from. I grew up in the Silicon Valley, in the suburbs, upper middle class family, neighborhood, that kind of thing. And so it wasn't really part of the culture and the DNA. So even though I loved drawing and making things all my life, I didn't consider that a professional career. It wasn't until I met actual practicing designers that my whole world and my life path had changed. Two people were instrumental in introducing me to this. One, it was a silkscreen print shop, and the owner, his name is Brad Shaboya. He brought me in, and I was inking over his drawings. Everything was done by hand. We would cut Rubylith with an X-Acto blade, and that's how we would create color separations. It was a very time-consuming and highly skilled job. And I liked that, but I wasn't really that skilled at drawing and inking over people's drawings. And so that wasn't really the thing that cemented it for me. But on a errand, I had to run an errand for my boss. I had to go pick up some typesetting. And this was at the dawn of the Macintosh computer and the laser printer. And so I went over and met this guy. His name is Dean Walker, and he was a professional graphic designer. He was traditionally trained. He knew how to use all the tools, Rapidograph, pen, all that kind of stuff. But he was embracing the Macintosh as a design tool. And so I sat there and looked at him work, and I was thinking, wow, this is incredible. What he was doing with the computer, the precision, the accuracy, he would hit Command P, and then minutes later, the printer would whirl to life, and it was a large refrigerator-sized printer. It was enormous. It's enormous. And then this little sheet of paper came out, and I looked at it, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is what I need to be doing. So it was that moment in time. I think I was 17, the summer before graduating high school, that I started to think, this is it. This is what I need to be doing with my life. That's how I came into design.
Did you go to a design school or something afterwards? Or an art school?
So I needed to get my portfolio together because this was a radical departure from my career path. And I decided to go to what I knew of at that time as the best design school. And it's Art Center, and I had to prepare my portfolio. And I worked on that for about a year. I submitted it, and that's what I got. That's how I got into Art Center.
I understand. So what I wanted to talk about is, how did you come to found Blind? How were the early days of founding Blind? How did the whole idea started?
I think I've always had this dream. I have had two dreams in my life, and I take them like from the beginning of when I knew what a professional career or dream was going to be like. One was to be a business owner. I wanted to build a business, and I knew that. And two was I wanted to teach. Those are the two things I needed to do. And when I graduated school, it seemed like for me, there were job opportunities. If you had a decent portfolio, there were plenty of places that you can go to. The economy was booming. Everybody was hiring, so to speak. And so I was content working for somebody until I thought, maybe this isn't the path for me. So I decided to freelance for a little bit. And when I say freelance, I mean literally go in and sell my services on an hourly basis to different companies. It was right around that time that my uncle, who's an attorney, called me up and said, hey, I know you've had this dream to start your own business. And I'm 22 years old right now, I think, in that time. I just had graduated college. And he said, I know you have this dream. I want to help you. Let's start a business together. My business partner and I need some design services. We are starting a line of luxury hotels, and we need a lot of design work. So we will capitalize your endeavor, and you can take on your own clients, but at least you'll have a really steady client with us. And that seemed like a dream come true. So we had a business meeting, and I asked him for $100,000 to start this company. Now I'm 22 years old. So just keep this in context, okay? I wrote a business plan. We met up at the Westin Bonaventure Hotel in downtown Los Angeles. We had dinner, and I handed over my business plan, which was, I knew at the time, like garbage, because I didn't have a lot of resources. I spent like 3 or 4 days prior to this meeting just working on it nonstop, calling up whoever I knew and doing my best to put together a business plan with 5-year projections, break-even point, all that kind of stuff. This is a lot for a 22-year-old kid to try to figure out,
and especially
pre-internet.
for a designer.
We're talking about not a lot of information available. So I did what I could do. I called up my good friend's dad, who was an investment banker. I said, can I borrow an hour of your time and pick your brain? I need to put this together. What are the bare bones structure? And the rest of it, I just put in there and just made up what I needed to make up. And I came up with a magic number of $100,000. I was thinking that should be enough money for us to last for 6 months without work, because I'm going to assume I can't get any work. That's a pretty safe assumption, right? And so after we met, he looked over the business plan really quickly. His name was Bob. Bob looked at it, and then Bob said, okay, I'm ready to do this deal with you. I like you. Let's do it. I'm going to write you a good faith check. So he literally reaches into his pocketbook, pulls out a check, and starts to write a check for me. I was thinking, oh my God, what is happening? Because at that point, I think I had stayed up all night working on the business plan. And I was very lightheaded at the point. And so he's writing this check out. He tears it off and he says, here you go. We shake hands and he says, congratulations, we're in business together. No contracts, nothing, no agreement.
Wait, he wrote me a check on 100 grand?
No, not for $100,000. This is a good faith. This is a good faith check. A good faith check is, this is a deposit on the money you need. So he wrote me a check for $5,000 on the spot. And still, that is a lot of money. We're talking about the mid 90s here. That's a lot of money. $5,000. I grab it. I'm gonna say thank you very much. We're in business together, and we're off to the races. I deposit the check in the bank account, and I tell basically everybody I was freelancing for that I'm no longer going to be available as a freelancer. I'm going to start my own company. And I remember telling my my boss, the guy who hired me at that time
Yep.
as a freelancer, and he had this really kind of look on his face like, that's audacious, man. You just got out of school, you're barely working for us, and you're telling me now you're starting a company? And he gave me this look, and he shook my hand, and he said, good luck. And he said it in an earnest way, but I knew what that meant. Good luck. We'll see you back here in a couple of months when you fail. And I've never looked back. That's how we started the company.
I understand. That's a really interesting and inspiring, actually, story you have over there. What I wanted to ask, how were the next steps, actually? How did you find the team? Have you been like by yourself only, or how was it?
Yeah. So when I was in this early stage and I had money, I was inviting friends who had either just graduated or didn't graduate, dropped out, whatever. I said, hey, you guys want to start a company with me? And I'll do my best to be very equitable. When money comes in, depending on your effort to it, I'll just chop the money with you. Okay. So if you do half the work, I'll give you half the money. If you do a quarter of the work, I'll give you a quarter of the money. And I need to take some out for management and overhead. And that's how we did it. So I just called friends up. We had some opportunities come in the door because I had been freelancing and I had a full-time job earlier than that. And so those people came and called and said, hey, we need some work. And so I just started hiring my friends. And this was through no marketing because I didn't understand marketing. I didn't understand how to build proposals or anything like that.
So people
we're talking about a new graduate
right?
here.
So people are just calling you.
They were calling me.
Yeah.
They were calling me because of a number of reasons. One was because I had a full-time job at an ad agency before quitting. Yeah. And I had a job or freelance work at this design company, and they needed a lot of design work. And I was very proficient at doing the work so that they wouldn't need to handhold me very much. So they asked me to crank on logos all day long. Like, we need a logo for this new channel, this new network on TV. Just make some ideas for us. And I was good at doing that. I could just jam on logos and I would make them, show them 8 or 10 options, and they would pay me and we'd just keep doing it. So they kept calling me and I kept raising my prices. And instead of doing all the work myself, I enlisted my friends and said, hey, you do the work. Get as far as you can. And then I will give you some direction, and then I'll take the files, I'll put the old polish on it, tighten up your files, and I'll send it over to the client. So we were just cranking. And that's how we were doing work.
That's interesting. And how long did it take you to get to a full-time employees? I mean, how many years have you been working until you could pay a salary to people?
Oh, within the first year.
Within the first year. Oh,
I think within the first year let me kind of just think about this. We kind of grew really fast. And I think in the beginning, people were just coming in kind of like freelance, just hanging out at the studio with me. I had this large 2,000 square foot space, and it was a loft, and I would sleep upstairs in the loft area, and all of downstairs was dedicated for workspace. So it was plenty of space for a couple of young kids just out of school. And I would just pay them a portion of whatever we made, and they would keep track of their hours, and everything was great. But there were a couple of people that I needed to just hire. One was a producer, and the other was a receptionist, somebody to answer phones and deal with just office management stuff. And those people were full-time.
I understand.
So I paid those people a salary. Yeah, that was within the first year.
I heard once on your channel, you've been talking about your company also, and you mentioned that you learn how to run a business only when you go through the hard times. And you were mentioning specifically about the year 2008 and so on, where the crisis was and so on. And I really wanted to find out, what exactly did you learn about running a business in those years, in those hard times?
Yeah. Well, in good times, times of plenty, when the jobs are flowing, the profit's great, you can be pretty sloppy about how you run your business, what you pay people, how you manage it. So those times don't really test you. I mean, they might test you in your ability to ramp, but it's the hard times that really test you, because you have to survive. You have to learn how to survive. And in our career arc, having a company for 22 years, there have been many highs and many, many lows for sure. And I don't want to gloss over that. So let me tell you the 3 points in which we hit some really big stumbling blocks. The first stumbling block was in 2000, and this was the dot-com crash. The dot boom, if you will, where everything melted. And so budgets were tightening up really fast. So all this money that was flowing in, ridiculous budgets that we saw, all of a sudden vanished. And the economy was recovering from the crash of all this speculative buyers and investors in these crazy internet companies. And then we're thinking, okay, things are going well again. And then I think it was in 2001, September 11th happened, and then the world was shocked. And this changed America and the world, I think, forever. And then we're just thinking, man, this is just what is happening? And then we start to drift into recession. We start to recover a little bit, and times are good again. So 2007 was the best financial year for our company. That year, we almost hit $7 million in billings.
Oh.
And that was amazing. We were like at 6.8 or 6.9 something, and it was awesome. So we're thinking, this is great. Let's expand. So that's when I bought a building, and it was more than double the size of the building we were in. And so I was thinking, this is great, because at that point in time, we were lined up everywhere, elbow to elbow, tables everywhere, running extension cords down the hallway and tripping circuits because we're drawing so much power. We had to turn computers on at a certain sequence so that not to trip the breaker. So we're thinking, this is impossible. We've far outgrown our space, and we need to move. And so we acquired the building, and we're doing a build out for about a year. The process takes a long time. And during that time, we drift into 2008, and the bottom of the market falls, and we just don't know where it's going. This is when Apple, I think, was around $83 a share. And it was down to $17 or $18. I was thinking, this is the end of it. This is it. This is the collapse of the world. It was really dark and bleak. And people were committing suicide, jumping out of buildings. I don't know if you remember that or not.
No.
If you're around. This is what was happening because there are a lot of day traders who are riding the economy.
Whoa.
And when it hit, it just ruined so many people. It really did. And so I think just because of packaging and cosmetic, that it wasn't called the Depression. They called it the Great Recession, but I think as all the economic indicators, it was a depression. And so now what happens? So for the first time ever in the history of our company, we are losing money. We grew into a space, or we acquired a space that we didn't need. So I had to lay off people. I had to make some really hard decisions as to who's going to be here. We had to ask people to take pay cuts. Across the board. We said, you know what? We want to keep everybody here. I've got to instigate a percentage pay cut for everybody. I understand if you don't want to work here, and everybody hung out with me. And I was thinking, this is still not enough. This is not enough. The work has stopped. I don't know what to do. And I'm paying a lot in terms of keeping the building and the lights on and everything else. So we had to let people go. And of course, every time you let somebody go, and we've had to let groups of people go over the years, it's hurt. It's hurt me, and it's hurt them. It frays relationships because we're all friends. We were all at one point hanging out at my house, the loft, or wherever, having dinner, lunch together, going on snowboarding trips, going skateboarding. We'd go to the skateboard shop, and I'm like, you guys, we're doing really well. Pick whatever you guys want. Let's go get some new skateboards. And they're like, really? Yeah. And so when you have to say goodbye to those people, there's no good way to do it.
Yeah. I can imagine.
And that's what happened. And so that's where it tests you. So during those times, and each and every time we had one of those dips, I had to learn how to run the business better, how to do bids, how to project, how to not overexpand. And sometimes we would hire more people thinking the economy is in recession. This is a great time for us to acquire talent, thinking that we could buck the trend, but we weren't able to overcome economic forces.
I understand. So do you also apply a couple of things that, of course, you learned this time until these days too? So, for example, you don't spend too much on things and so on, tighten the budgets, or not?
Maybe. Well, we know how to run a company really well now.
Yeah.
We know what our numbers need to be. We know what the margins are. So my entire team, from the management team, the executive producers to my creative directors, they know how to budget and bid jobs. They know how much to spend on things. And we have really, and this is a rarity, responsible creative directors. Most creative directors, they just want to do the most beautiful thing. They really don't care if the job makes money. And then conversely, they also want to be paid a lot. So what I have are really responsible creative directors where they look at the money and they spend it as if it were their own.
Yeah.
And with that, I'm able to grow the company and allow them almost full control of what it is they're doing. They can hire whoever they want. They can spend what they need to because they've earned my trust, and we've earned each other's trust.
I understand. You touched actually an interesting topic. What do you think are good qualities for a creative director? What qualities should a creative director possess? Because you said like, yeah, they just want to create beautiful things and so on.
Yeah. So what a lot of people don't understand is to be a creative director, first and foremost, you have to understand how to direct and craft beautiful things, not through your own hands, but how to guide a team and to get it to be at a certain level. That's a given. The other things that you need to do is you need to be able to learn how to talk to clients. You need to be able to be emotionally neutral so that when the clients are not happy or they're thrilled, that you know how to run the team appropriately. And you have to have confident creative directors so that they aren't easily manipulated by the clients who say, oh, this isn't what I was hoping for. Maybe you guys can do X, and that's a brand new direction. They have to be able to say, okay, that's fair that you want to do that, but that's out of scope. And let's try to find an economical way to do this. Otherwise, we have to hit you up with an overage. That's out of scope. There's other things. They need to be very responsible and mindful. And I'd like my creative directors to have a little kind of business savvy, a business sense, and a business acumen, if you will. And that would be good for them to have as well. So they understand the business part, they understand the creative part, and they know how to work with clients.
Yeah. I understand. So you have more than 20 years of experience in the whole design business field. What are some things that did not change and you think that will not change in the entire design business? I mean...
Well, that's a tough one because I think almost everything changes.
Everything changes.
I think almost everything changes, and the assumption should be that you must change with all things, otherwise you'll get caught behind. There are a few things that probably won't change. Understanding how to tell stories, understanding basic rules of composition and design, whether it's with images or with type or graphic elements. The world will still need beautiful identities to represent who they are, that are smart and timeless. I think that's always going to be. But everything else changes because today we're talking about companies that are springing up and doing really well, just helping companies tell their story through social media.
Yeah.
That was not even a thing a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
Like, look how old Facebook is, and they have over 1 billion users, active users on a daily basis. And that was just a novel concept less than 10 years ago. Instagram, Snapchat, they're only years old. So all this stuff is changing. So technology, culture, and society push change upon us. And you have to be able to embrace it. You have to be nimble and adapt to it. And you have to be flexible enough to say, this isn't what I planned, but my plan is to be in business and to be a creative person, not to be a person who does only X, Y, or Z.
Yeah, I understand. Yeah, I've seen also that you at Blind changed to like the services you offer. Am I right? I mean, in the beginning, I saw that you had only like motion and this kind of stuff, and
That's
then you
right.
moved into the web slowly.
Well, yeah, let me give you a broader contextual answer to that question. In the very beginning, we offered logo design,
Okay.
website design,
Yep.
and motion graphics. And we weren't good at any one of those three things. We're okay. To be honest, we're okay. Like, I could get away with doing design work, but I didn't understand technical requirements, color space, dimensions, pixel aspect ratio, all these kinds of things, even frame rates. I didn't understand all that. I had to learn all that stuff on my own. So we had decided very early on, nobody is going to hire us because we're kind of okay at everything. We need to be really good at something. And this motion thing is very exciting to me. I'd like to do this. So we stopped our marketing and asking for this other kind of work. We just buckled down and started doing motion design work. And that's what kind of pushed us through for 2 decades. But as you know, probably, if you're working in the commercial world, commercials have declined in terms of their budgets, the creativity, the amount of commercials. People are airing old commercials because maybe they don't work as well as they used to. It could be that they never worked and we didn't know, but now we have all these metrics, these tools to see how many widgets are moved, how many email signups we got. And so spending money that way in traditional media doesn't make a lot of sense anymore. We've also gone through the good enough revolution where good enough is okay. And what I mean by that, there's an excellent Wired article on this. If you guys look it up, the good enough revolution. And it talks about how digital cameras supplanted these beautiful large format cameras, and then GoPros replaced the digital cameras. And so it's okay, and it works. So at some point, relative to the original price, the quality is okay and it's fine. So if you're paying a tenth of the price of something and it's not a tenth as bad, then we're willing to deal with that. So we have now drones that you can buy that can fit in your backpack for less than $1,000 that used to cost tens of thousands of dollars, and we're exclusive to a few people, and it keeps going like that. And as Apple likes to tout, the iPhone is the world's most popular camera based on the volume of images that are being produced on it.
Yeah.
So whereas the old timers would say, film 35 millimeter, it'll never go away, and maybe it won't. But there are fewer and fewer people using 35 millimeter film because the best camera is the camera that you have.
Yeah.
And you're not always carrying film and your camera, your Hasselblad or your Leica. You're not always carrying that around with you, but you have your phone. And so that's what's happened. And so we see the erosion in the marketplace for high-end, big-budget commercials, and we have to adapt. So what are we going to do? We're not going to sit there and say, well, this is it. Gentlemen, it was a pleasure serving with you. We have to move into learning how to do client direct work. We have to learn, oddly enough, how to do branding and identity design and websites. You remember at the very beginning, that's what we used to do?
Web 1.0.
Right. That was like web like .0, or 1.0.
Yeah.
And then now it's come full circle. So now we're working with clients directly. We have agency work that we do when they give us the work scripts that we then produce commercials for. And then we do brand identity and brand strategy for our clients now. And so we've done the full pivot, and we've pivoted many, many times.
But do you think the fact that you found a niche in the whole field of motion helped you to stand out in a way or not?
What do you mean?
Because I see a lot of companies nowadays, agencies, you go on their website and they say that they do tons of services, and in the end they don't realize what they do. And just leave the website afterwards. And because what I'm trying to say is finding a niche for your agency going to help you out, be good and find new clients and so on and stand out?
Yeah. So let me address a couple of things as far as what I think you're saying. If you go on a lot of websites from solopreneurs or small 2-3 person shops, they're going to say, we do the entire gamut of creative services. We'll wash your car. We'll design your identity. We'll figure out a keynote for your mom. We'll do everything. And in fact, they're just words on a screen. What they don't have is actual proof of anything that they're saying. They might be okay at a few things because all you have to do is dig a little bit deeper into their site and these big audacious statements, which I applaud them for trying. And then you look at their work and there's a total disconnect. Why would I hire you? You're not even good. Let alone you don't do this. And people say, we do branding. And really what you do is you design logos and identity systems. You don't do branding. And so when we pivot on our site and you're asking if the motion design work helped, it did help in a way. It didn't help in having proof that we know how to build amazing websites or understand user experience design or even brand strategy. It didn't help for that. But how it helped was we had produced work for very large, big, credible, multinational, multi-billion-dollar companies. And so that does get some name recognition in there.
Some social proof.
A little social proof. And because we had done that work, we also got a bit of press. And we won a few awards here and there. And that helps. So when they say, wow.
You're too humble. A couple of Emmy, right?
Well, when you come into a meeting, you don't bring the statues with you. You don't do any of that. But the fact that you've worked with some of these really big brands like Nike or Microsoft or Xbox or Sony or whatever, they're like, okay, they're not just some kids who talk a good game. They've done something. Now, the rest of the time we have to overcome the fact that we don't have a vertical expertise. So the first web job assignment that we had to win of like a decent size, that was a tough process. That's when I started to realize, my goodness, there's things that I've learned in doing the work for 22 years, doing pitches, hundreds of pitches, not a few, hundreds, maybe 1,000. I don't know. We've done a lot of pitches, and having been coached for over 10 years by a business coach, that I was utilizing all these skills, not to mention teaching, and I was using them to close these jobs. And so the thing that I recognized was I did not learn this in school. And there are a lot of super talented creative people out there, way more creative and talented than me, for sure, that are not doing well financially. It's because they lack some fundamental business skills, their relationship with money, their aversion to conflict, the high friction stuff. When the client says, well, what's the budget? Well, I can't afford that. And many of them, they become nervous, they cave, they have feelings of guilt, and they sell themselves short at that point. That's when I came to the realization, we need to start to teach this stuff. We need to change the dialogue, because in school, the general principle, and I don't care what school you go to, the general principle is we're going to teach you how to make stuff because those skills are employable. Some other schools will say, well, we teach conceptual thinking. Well, I don't even know what that means. Like, show me your concept. And then you look at it, it's like, that's not very interesting nor smart. So you got nothing. You know, you read a lot. Bravo. You know your history. Great. And now what? What we really need to do, I think, is to create a track where you're learning design problem solving simultaneously with business. So you're using design to solve a business problem, a communication problem, a marketing problem. And there are very few places that I know of that actually do this to the degree that I think it should be done.
So that's why you actually also launched the Future, right? To teach people, the designers, the business skills and so on.
That's correct. We want to teach the business of design and the intersection of the two, mostly because we want to empower creative people to be paid what they're worth. But if you go into a room and you don't speak the language of business, you're going to be at a disadvantage. So what I like to say is, you speak the language of creativity. You need to speak the language of business, so you need to be bilingual.
You've been mentioning that you've been doing hundreds and hundreds of pitches before getting a job and so on. Do you still, I don't know, for example, you have a client meeting, a potential client meeting. Do you also do a pitch nowadays, or it's just because of your social proof and so on, you just get down to business?
That's a very good question. I want to clarify something. In the 22 years, we've done hundreds of pitches. We don't do hundreds of pitches to get one client.
Okay.
Because we would be bankrupt. I would not even be in business, because if you ever had a pitch or put together a proposal of any size,
it takes time.
It takes a lot of energy. It takes a lot of energy. And you know what? When you don't get it, it's very deflating.
When you work 2 to 3 days on a pitch and then the client says no, and
or they don't even call you back. How about that?
That's.
Or they say, we went in a different direction. Are you willing to do more work? Woo! So you fall down that rabbit hole, and it's not a good hole to be down. When we're talking about doing client direct work, and I want to make a clear distinction here. There's agency work, which the rules of the game dictate that you pitch. We only have a handful of clients that say you don't need to pitch. Just show us some ideas. It's your job. It's just your job. But we want to see some ideas so we can share it with our client. That's cool. That doesn't happen that often. Most of the times, it's a sword fight, and you're competing with the best companies in the world at any given day, because that's who they can call. That's a different world. Now, when we're doing client direct work, all the brand strategy, identity design, web design, that kind of work, we do not pitch at all. And when I say pitch, is we do not give away free creative services. We will put together a proposal that basically outlines a few key things: scope of work, timeline, and budget. The rest of it is mostly a template.
Let's say the client agrees enough towards what you do. You just have another couple of meetings, you put down everything on paper, and then you just sign the client, right?
Well, it's a little bit more complicated than that. So when you're trying to close a client and it's 20,000 and under, it's very different than a job that's 100,000 under. Or something that's above 100,000 up to $1 million. Each one of the client onboarding process takes a different amount of time. The bigger the client, the more time it's going to take to close the assignment. Because if you consider they're spending a lot of money, they want to make sure they have the right partner, so they're going to do their due diligence, and they're going to check you out. They're going to call for references. They're going to look up your body of work. They're going to maybe even search on the internet to see if there's any bad press on you. So that process isn't just, here's the bid, thank you very much, thanks for the check, we'll start tomorrow. It doesn't happen like that.
I understand.
Okay? So typically, and I'll outline this for some of your audience, this is usually how it happens. There's an initial inquiry. Somebody reaches out. They've seen your work. Somebody has referred them or referred you to them, and they look you up, and then they reach out and say, hey, we have a project coming up. We'd like to talk to you about it. Great. We schedule a call. We get on the phone. We talk about what their needs are. We have an understanding of the scope. And then we say at that point, based on our understanding at this preliminary stage, this is what we think the budget should be. Should we continue to engage? Is this within the ballpark of what you're willing to spend? They either say yes or no, and you have to be willing to work with that. So I say, okay, great. So we're all on the same page. We understand what's your timetable. We get all that stuff. Okay, what are the next steps? And we ask them that. So we don't want to make an assumption. Well, can you put some of this in writing? Great. I'll send over a proposal by the end of the week. Are you good with that? Yes. Okay. Work on it. We send it over with some capabilities. Then what usually happens is the people you talk to need to get buy-in from their bosses, usually the CEO, the CMO, somebody like that. Then there's an internal discussion. They come back. They're like, okay, we need to make a couple of tweaks here. And then we want you to talk to the CMO. So there's a whole vetting process. You go through it. Then you might talk to the CEO, and then you start to schedule things. Then you get into contracts and negotiations, getting all the details, who owns what at what stage, what are the penalties, what do you agree on, what do they own, what don't they own, etc.
That's lots of details.
I just looked at your face. You're like, oh my God, that's what it takes to play in the big leagues.
Yeah, I can imagine, especially when you work with like really big companies and the process is really long and it takes even up to half a year until you sign the contract and you can start working and so on. Yeah, that takes lots of time.
Yeah, it takes time, but then the money is there.
Money.
the stature of the job is there. If you want to work with Nike, if you want to work with big tech companies, that's the process.
You have to have patience for that. Lots of patience.
Well, I think I wouldn't even look at it as patience. It's like you just have to learn to play the long game. It's a different game. So, for example, you wouldn't enter it as a sprinter. You'd enter it as a marathon, and you have to train differently. So there are different body types and build types. If you're a sprinter, you'll be relegated to doing these short jobs and working with a certain kind of client base. But we're marathon runners. We're playing the long game.
No, I get it. I get it. One interesting topic you're touching in your video sometimes is strategy. And I think not everybody has a good understanding what strategy is, and somebody knows, somebody don't know. And what's strategy for you? How do you define strategy?
A strategy is really about having a tactic, a plan to achieve a specific goal. If you think about it in military terms, what's our strategy to defeat the enemy? So we have 500 to their 10,000. We have to look at the landscape, the weather, their forces, what they're good at, what they're bad at, and how are we going to overcome this thing? So that's we have now a plan, a strategy, and how to accomplish this. The execution of it is at the very end. So this is the plan. When we're talking to a client and we're doing brand strategy, they have very specific goals. Some of their goals could be, and I'm drawing from real life here, is that although we were founded on these principles and served this market really well, we've evolved and changed so much so that the old identity system, the old brand messaging is holding us back because people continue to think of us for this one specific thing, whereas we're much bigger and do many different things than that at this point. And so we sit down and we figure out, well, how are we going to do that? What are the things that you offer today? How much of that is your actual market share? How do we overcome the challenges that people who used to know you as this, how will they know you as this new thing? So we're having a very, very different kind of dialogue with our client at this point. We're not asking them, what's your favorite colors? What brand do you admire? How many pieces of collateral do you need? We're not talking about that at all. Not at this stage.
So what are, like, for example, typical questions you ask when it comes to strategy? You ask, for example, what are your current business problems? Or if you could give a couple of examples.
Yeah. So companies now will come to us and say, here's what we think we need. And the usual question I ask is, why do you think you need that? Our market's changed. People no longer purchase and buy in these ways. they're going to say something. And then what we do is we just dive deeper and deeper into that until we get to the core. And let's try and figure out a problem here. Let me just come up with something.
I don't know. Let's say I launched.
I got something.
Yeah. Okay.
I got something. Okay. Let's say you are Tower Records.
Yeah.
I don't know if you were old enough to know Tower Records, but we used to buy CDs and LPs and cassette tapes at a place called Tower Records. And there were landmark locations all around California, at least. And we would go to these places. And so what was happening at Tower Records is that the consumption of music was changing drastically because powered by the internet and social sharing sites and illegal places where you can download, rip, and share music, basically through a technology called MP3, which is another thing about the good enough revolution, which is it's not as good as the CD or the LP, but it's good enough because it's compact and you can fit a lot of files on a hard drive. So if Tower Records were to come to us and say, Chris, we have a problem. We need a new identity system. We need to do rebranding because things aren't happening. Well, a designer would say, great, let's redesign Tower Records. Let's make it fresh. Let's make it modern. Let's make it relevant. And let's change the colors. Fundamentally, they would not have solved the problem. If you want to be a strategist, you sit down and you say, okay, I understand. Consumption is changing. Why do you think that is? Well, the kids now, they don't care about quality anymore. Okay, well, why is that? And then you get into MP3s and you keep diving deeper and deeper into that. So perhaps the challenge is people want to be able to buy music a la carte. They don't want to buy the whole album. They want to be able to preview a large catalog without having to commit to buying anything. And they need a simple way to buy the music and have it shared and organized on their listening device. We see this coming. Shouldn't we create an online music store to give them the opportunity to buy this so that they have a choice to lower the pain point to such that it's easier to buy it legally than it is to risk downloading it illegally? Should we work towards that? So then Tower Records would have become iTunes instead of being out of business.
That's interesting.
Now, where is this in this entire dialogue? Where is design? Well, I'm using design thinking to solve these problems. I'm using empathy and cultural anthropology to kind of understand what's going on. Now, most likely, even if they hired me, and even if at that point in time, I think I was the world's most foremost business consultant, I think they probably still would not have done it because they were no longer flexible, open, and they were committed to doing what they were doing to their own demise. I'll share one more story for you.
Sure.
I don't know if you know this or not, but there was an engineer at Kodak who invented the digital sensor that's in all digital cameras today at Kodak. Okay. He presented the idea to his bosses. They're like, great, we're not going to do that. Why is that? Because that's going to cannibalize film. That's going to destroy our market. Can you believe that?
Man.
That the person who invented the digital sensor for cameras came from Kodak and they didn't capitalize on it. So what happens? Kodak files for bankruptcy and is rescued by other companies. But they could have been the king of the world. They could have embraced that technology, licensed it to other people and say, well, for every camera you sell, from Apple to Samsung to Nikon to Panasonic to Canon, you owe us a royalty for everything that's sold. You're going to license our technology to you. Didn't happen. Can you see a pattern here? I have many more stories, but I'm not going to bore you.
No, it's okay. It's okay.
We don't learn. That's the problem.
Well, do you think it's more or less because for these companies is because they're afraid of change, because they already have a path of something that's working for them and they don't want to change and lose share, for example, or money?
Well, what they're doing is there's a bigger, deeper business question here, and I'm going to share this a little bit with you, so hang in there with me, okay?
Sure.
The CEOs of companies are responsible to stockholders, stakeholders, shareholders.
Yeah.
And they publish quarterly reports.
Mm-hmm.
And the fortunes of the company and the security of the CEO lies on these quarterly reports. Are we hitting our numbers?
Yeah.
So what they're doing is they're doing everything they can for short-term gain versus the long-term play. Very few CEOs behave this way,
Yeah.
where they think into the future. Jeff Bezos, now I believe, is to surpass Bill Gates as the wealthiest man in the world, is in it for the long play. Amazon has been running for a decade now without making a profit.
Yeah.
Yet their valuation is incredible because people see what he's doing. He's been very successful at launching into different verticals. They started with books. They sell everything now, including cars, I believe. And they are getting into other spaces. Speech recognition.
Yeah.
They're getting into devices, tablets.
Even food,
they're getting into
Whole
music.
Foods. Yeah.
They acquired Whole Foods. They're doing same-day deliveries. They're experimenting with drone delivery. They're doing lots and lots of very crazy, innovative things because he's in the long play. Now, he set it up so that he can continue to do this and not be fired.
Yeah.
Guys like Elon Musk are doing the same thing. They're in it. There's a much longer play here. Same thing with Zuckerberg, with Facebook. We're going to do things that are going to scare most investors, but hang in there, guys. So that's the difference because of the way it's structured. I'm not saying that people are dumb, because they're not dumb. They're much smarter than I am, for sure. But the nature of the way it's structured is that they have to produce short-term gain. How do they do this? They try to charge more money. They try to trim their workforce down so that it looks profitable.
Yeah.
They spend more money on marketing to make it look like it's something bigger.
Yeah.
And that's the trap. And it's very difficult. I mean, if you just even look at it on a human level, like you as a business owner, as a podcaster, whatever it is that you are, tomorrow I'm going to tell you that everything that you've done thus far is dead. Welcome to the new reality. How many people would be able to say, oh, yeah, you're right. Let's do this. We're ingrained in everything that it is that we do. And I talked to a doctor of anatomy, and she talks about these neural pathways that they're like grooves in a record. These synaptic nerves fire from point A to point B. You connect an experience with an emotion. So when you design or you do branding or whatever you do, it seems pleasurable, you get better at it, and the grooves get deeper and deeper. All of a sudden tomorrow I say, you need to be a juggler. The world needs jugglers, and that's on trend, and this is going to launch you into the next 20 years of your life. And when you say, well, I don't do juggling, man. I only do. So that needle, it sits in that groove of the record, and it gets deeper and more ingrained. So it takes a lot of effort for that needle to jump out of the groove and start a new path. It is possible. But the question is, how malleable is your mind? Can it be shaped? Can you change direction? And so if I can do anything for your audience today, if you just look at our history for 22 years, because that's a long time to have one owner, one brand name, no scandals, nothing's going on, didn't cheat anybody, didn't not pay somebody, didn't do anything unethical. How do we do that? How do we sustain ourselves for so long? And we've hit many, many challenges, I promise you. It's because we keep adapting. One day I come into the office, say, guys, I've thought about it. We need to do this now. All you guys with me, let's do this. All you guys that don't believe in that, go find a company that does that and go do that with them, because we're not going to be in business. Now, I remember having many meetings with my team about 4 years ago saying, I see the demise of commercials coming. This is 4 or 5 years ago. And many of the top management people are like, Chris, you're wrong. It's not going to happen that fast. It's not going to happen. And I say, okay, that's fine. You need to find a job somewhere else. That's cool. The rest of us are going to figure out this problem. I need your help. We tried one thing. It didn't work. We tried another thing. It didn't work. And I was thinking, this is it. This is the end of us. It was a good 20 years. Thank you for your service, guys. And then it started to click. It takes a while, you see, because you do these things that are almost invisible to people that nobody can really see. But added over time, 6-9 months later, we get our first branding assignment. We start building websites. We didn't know what we were doing, but we did our best, and they were happy. And so we learned and grew. And now when people come to us, hopefully really soon, they won't even know of us as a motion design company anymore. They'll know us as a brand strategy design consultancy first and foremost. And by the way, we do motion graphics. By the way, we do identity systems. By the way, we build websites. But first and foremost, come to us for the thinking. We can solve your business problems.
I understand. Chris.
Evolution, man. We move fast, right? We move really fast, and you have to. Evolution is a biological advantage.
Yeah.
It's what allowed us to beat out Neanderthal and Cro-Magnon. That's why you and I, as Homo sapiens, are here. But fight your biological advantage in evolution, you know what will happen to you.
Chris, coming to a close now. What is something that you didn't realize, but you realize it now by being on this journey of founding Blind the Future?
What did I learn?
Yeah.
There's too many lessons for me to sum it up in one answer. But I will tell you this.
Yeah.
I'll tell you this. I want to give you guys a spark of hope and something to aspire to think of and to do. I think the era of the superstar designer, the uber creative person, the auteur, if you will, is over. Yeah. If you're David Fincher, if you're Paul Rand, if you're one of these luminaries in your creative field, great. You've been able to capitalize on that. Excellent. That era is over. Sad news. Good news is there's a new era. And if you're willing to embrace it, go out of your comfort zone, you can live an incredible life and do the things that you were meant to do. You can fulfill the destiny that was written for you. And what do you have to do? What you have to do is you have to learn to build an audience around the things that you love. And you can love anything. I mean, as long as it's not illegal or hurting people, you can love anything. So if you're a calligrapher, build an audience around your beautiful penmanship and your skill. And you will stop working for companies and corporations. You'll be working for your community. They will support you. I see that happening. And I hope, too, that the things that we do have built up enough of a community that they will, in turn, support us. And we're seeing it happen. We're seeing it happening right now. It's just not happening at the scale that I'd like. People are donating to us, giving us money on a monthly basis without any strings or promises attached.
Yeah. It's because I think they find value in everything you do, and it teaches them, and it, like, in the end, it makes them feel good because they learn something and they can apply it afterwards.
That's my hope. That we're actually helping somebody to secure a job that they couldn't get before. We're helping people to think differently about their marketing, and so they do that, and they start getting new inquiries for business. We're helping people with their self-confidence and their mindset, so that they can feel better about what they do and ask to be paid a fair amount for the work that they do. And the strategies on how to talk to clients. We're hoping that works, and it is working, and the experiment continues.
Do you have any book recommendations for people that are listening? Maybe on strategy, design, or philosophy? Okay, I know that you have a ton. Let's stick to top 3 book recommendations.
Here's my top 3 book recommendations. I would say you need to read Blair Enz's book. It's called The Win Without Pitching Manifesto. That's right in there. It's an easy read. You can get through it really fast. I also recommend reading Tony Hsieh's book, Delivering Happiness. He's the founder of Zappos, the shoe delivery company that was acquired by Amazon for $1 billion. And the third book I'm going to recommend is Marty Neumeier's book. It's called Zag. He has a series of books. One is called The Brand Gap, Zag, The Designful Company. And I forget the other one right now. But Marty Neumeier's book is excellent for branding. And so I think those 3 are a really good primer. One will teach you about what branding really is. The other one will teach you how to sell it and position yourself as an expert. And lastly, delivering happiness. As your company grows, you need to make sure you're in control of the culture, that it's not an inadvertent culture, one that doesn't reflect your values. So I think that's the trifecta right there, the trinity.
Anything about strategy? Maybe a book or something?
The Douglas Davis book it's called Creative Strategy, The Business of Design. I think that's a pretty good book because he's a designer who then went and got his business degree.
Thank you very much for being today, Chris.
It's my pleasure. Thanks for having me.